There's a lot of work to be done, certainly on large scale issues. To list them off, NIL, transfer portal, guardrails around those. What does the postseason really look like, in particular in 26 and beyond, when it really changes, right? We're going to expand, but when it really becomes something that we can shape, all the people in college football, what does that look like? What does the calendar look like for coaches? What all these things? So when you sit there and listen, that can be like a fire hose to anybody. Certainly a new commissioner who's trying to onboard all the things that you were talking about internally. Take me through maybe like your first 100 days and how you want to position yourself and the conference within the national conversation of those issues that we deal with.
Yeah, I think the first thing you do is you start with relationships, right? I need to build those relationships with the other A5 commissioners and with the NCAA office with Charlie Baker as well. So I think a big part of the first 60, 75 days so far for me is doing just that, spending time. And they've been great as a group, spent a lot of time with each of them individually and together. And I think to do and address some of the issues that you're alluding to, we need to do that collectively, right? These are really big, issues that are challenges that are going to take collaboration to address. Like no conference is big enough to do this by themselves. Doesn't mean that you can't take leadership positions. Of course you can, and we will do that at the Big Ten. But at the same time, we're going to need to collaborate and work together and figure out where the best ideas are coming from. Because you can't. One conference, look, it's a really unique thing. Like in MLB, it's one organization. The NFL is one organization. All the teams are collectively
it's nimble,
right? It's just one entity that that deals with all these issues. Here we've got that we all compete against each other. We have different media contracts, a lot of differences, but at the core, we're doing the same thing and we're competing together. So we've got to come together on those issues that impact all of us.
See, I think that's going to be your most difficult task, candidly, because in this sport, we operate in silos, and that's just the way it's built, right? And I would tell Greg the same thing, and Brett the same thing. Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, or George Kolovkov, Pac-12, or Jim Phillips in the ACC. I'll tell you the same thing. It's like at some point, when the rubber meets the road, you work for the Big 10 presidents.
Correct.
Greg works for the SEC presidents. And I think what has been missing in college football is the collaboration, is an overarching view of the sport. This goal of yours to work cohesively to make the sport better, do you think you can do it?
I think the first thing I'll say is that I think everybody agrees that we need to do it. So that's the first step to trying to come together, right?
But getting them out of the silo, that's the tough part.
You got to understand you need to do it. And I feel really confident that the other A5, they really feel like we need to do this together. So there's no doubt about that. I feel it early on. I'm assuming it'll continue and only grow in terms of spending more time together. So I think that's there. I think, again, you got to go back and figure out like what things you do that are, it's highly competitive, obviously, on the field and, wins and all that matter the most. But at the same time, we need one ecosystem that we all can thrive in together because we do compete in that system. So it's got to be fair across for everybody. And so I feel I'm just going to be optimistic that we can work together. Now, optimistic about working together versus what kind of results you can get are two different things. But I feel good that there's a real belief that working together is something that we have to do.
And listen, I don't think anyone really understands transfer portal and NIL because it's it's so new and so malleable. But what I do think people understand, you in particular, because of your history. I mean, you were involved in the initial BCS, right? I mean, like you've been in both sides of made-for-TV events, right? Postseasons and different types of deals. So the expanded playoff, I think that's the moment, the point where everyone can say, okay, we understand what's best for the sport overall. Do you feel like you can get a position of leadership, even though you're 2 months into your commissionership with the Big Ten, in order to lead something like that, a real collaborative effort that forms a postseason that's better for all of college football?
Yeah, it's a really insightful question. I think because I think about exactly that a lot, where you're new, but you're representing an organization that's got incredible importance and weight
and power. Let's face it, right? I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten have the most influence.
Right, and that's the way I have to. You can't let the fact that you're new take away from the entity that you're representing. That's part of the challenge of there. And so it really is incumbent on me to get up to speed and be, ready to lead in that room as quickly as possible. And hopefully, that's the process is underway already. I will say, that I see in the meetings I've been in on the CFP. I see really great collaboration. Doesn't mean that the interests are all always aligned, right? Ultimately, right? Because again, it's pretty competitive, but I do see it, and I think what you're talking about is exactly right. Like being new, but at the same time understanding who we represent and how important and influential that organization is when you're talking about the Big Ten. So, I think that's the way I have to carry myself, right? Despite how new I am.